Experts predicted Knoxville's mayoral primary election to have low voter turnout, and yesterday's votes confirmed that projection, but it was close in some races. Around 16,500 people voted in Knoxville's mayoral election. Both yesterday during the primary election and during early voting. That's a little more than 16% of the 100,000 people who were eligible to vote. So how does a low election turnout impact future races? We are now joined by Halloran Hilton Hill of News Talk 98.7 and Dr. Mark O'Gorman, an associate professor of political science at Mayoral College. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Triple H, I heard you on the radio this morning and you were talking about people who complain about government, and yet we saw 16% turnout.
Right. Well, that means 84% did not show up and vote. And if you look at the political climate, people are like, rah, 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 rah. Then you ask them, did they vote? And they're like, meow. Right. So check this out. So you got Neyland Stadium. It holds 107,000 people, right? If 16% of the people showed up at every game, about 28,000 people, how many seasons would we have before we change something? Or let's say, for instance, the citizens of this community were allowed to vote on who the next head coach would be, right? I mean, people show up for what they want to show up for. It is pitiful to have 86% of the registered voters just not show.
So, Professor, what does that tell us about this election in particular and this election season? Because we're looking at November now with another election just 6 weeks away.
That's right. You hope things will change and more people are going to turn out. I know off-year elections are always a little bit more difficult to get people to turn out and to try to vote. But I think you even mentioned it earlier, the fact that we live in a time where everyone's going online and posting blogs, trying to be active via the internet. I think for me, I'd hope they can be active in the voting booth in 6 weeks.
Halloran, you have talked to the candidates. What do they say? They've knocked on thousands of doors, and they're encouraging people to get out, and still that doesn't have an impact. And we have lots of candidates in this election.
So in the 6th district, I mean, there's a huge number of voters in the 6th district, well over 100,000 voters. Maryland Roddy, for one, knocked on 12,000 doors. There were a total in all of the race, or all of the candidates had about 10,000 votes. So they knock on 12,000 doors, only 10,000 people show up and vote. And I think, and Professor, you may have to help me with this, but low voter turnout favors political machinery. The known quantities that, so to a really strategic campaign, low voter turnout actually helps because they're looking at who votes regularly, where they vote, and they're able to tailor their message to the specific people that they know will vote. However, we live in this country where we have the right to shape our government, we the people, and we complain, but we don't participate.
Professor, one thing that stood out in this election that is a little bit reverse of the trend, and that is that primary voting was beaten by election day voting, which we haven't typically seen.
Yeah, and that could be just the number of candidates that were involved, the fact that maybe you had, at least with some of these early with the primaries, some people that were well known, and so maybe that helped get the vote out. It'll be interesting as the general election moves forward. Will some of the candidates that are remaining, will they be able to get endorsements, and will that help propel the general election forward and maybe have a different outcome in terms of percentage of vote?
Let's hope so. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Always good to see you both. We'll be back right after this.